Welcome to Vital Life Energy Formulas. Today's questions and answers, and we're going over Lymphatic Rosary today with the iridology. And I'm going to show you a before and after photograph. Also, Jeff wants me to share some new information that's coming out about the flirt variant of COVID, SARS-CoV-2, and originally a subvariant of Omicron, which Omicron was a subvariant of the COVID, SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. I will be sharing that information that Jeff wants me to share with you all today. Vital Life Energy Formulas does not treat, diagnose, cure, profess a cure of any sort of disease. What I have up on the screen right now, let me move this out of the way so you guys can see this, and let me put me there. I have the image that I sent through today showing the iris from a photograph, one from before and one from the most recent photo that the person sent. And this is about a 3-month cycle of the change that I'm seeing here from before on the left-hand side of the screen where you see my mouse to the most recent 2-3 months later on the right-hand side of the screen where you see my mouse. Now, lymphatic rosary looks like rosary beads, and I know it doesn't necessarily show up like rosary beads, but you can tell because we're dealing with zones in the iris too. So you got zone 7, which is the skin, and just inside where zone 7 is the lymphatic area, which is where you're seeing all this yellow discoloration. And you can see the rays coming off the digestive hub, which goes around the central part of the iris. And you can see all these rays of yellow radiating from the digestive hub, which of course I just shared on a question that somebody had about the colon and the reproductive area have 50% lymph. They're made up of 50% lymph. So you can see the rays radiating out from the autonomic nerve reef, which is the digestive hub inside the autonomic nerve reef. And you can see it's radiating out to zone 6, which is the lymphatic area. Now, there's a lot of changes because if you look, the rays that this person was showing going all the way out to the outer circumference, as I say, it's a clock, it's a time clock. So it's going from 8 o'clock all the way round to all the way across, all the way around. So let's go from a clock and go 12, it's the strongest from 1 o'clock all the way around to 3. That's where it's the strongest. And then you'll see coming down, because we can't see the bottom of the eyelid here, but we go from 7 o'clock all the way around to 12 o'clock. And when you take a look at the most recent photo that was sent, look, even the rays had more blue fibers in between. So the rays that you see at 7 o'clock, and you see the ray there, and you'll see that the ray doesn't radiate, like you see blue fibers. You don't have the rusty orange yellow radiating out to the zone 6 and also out to zone 7. So straight away you can see that the lymph is draining excess fungus, mold, bad bacteria, pathogens, and excess fluid out of the lymph, and it's draining. Now, when you see the locations of where the actual lymph is more congested, then you know that those are the areas that you need to focus on with the treatment. 8 o'clock in the right eye is a direct reflex to the liver. So that's where all the lymph congestion was showing, and it's also going around to the person's lungs and the back of their neck and also into the brain. So nature wants to make sure that the blood carries oxygen to the brain. And so the blood vessels connected at the base of the clavicles, underneath the shoulders there, along the clavicle and the shoulders, and underneath the base of the neck where the sternum is, will drain any toxin of the pathogen that's in the lymph and enter it back into the bloodstream to send it back into your liver for the liver to either produce ura to flush it out through the urine or activate bile, and you release that to eliminate it in the stools. When you're seeing congestion like we're seeing in the most recent, in the old photograph, and obviously the improvement in the most recent photograph, is showing that the immune system, the white blood cells that are in the lymph nodes, the T cells that go to each lymph node, the T cells are the intelligent immune cells, are actually recognizing the mold, the fungus, the pathogen, the bad bacteria, and draining it out of the lymph, entering it to the liver's breaking it down into the urea cycle to flush it out through the kidneys, or releasing bile to poop out the toxin. Shows an improvement, but you can also see from looking at the iris, from looking within out, from the inside around the autonomic nerve reef to the outer circumference as well, because it goes from inside out, head down. So you can see it's obvious how much more of an improvement in the lymph system in this individual compared to when they first started with us and on the program. Even the shape of the eye, it's not as almond shaped. So the lymphatic system is found in zone 6. Remember, I'm saying zones, right? Zone 7 is the outer circumference, and it goes in on zone 6, which is why you're seeing all these areas like where the arrow is. Look at how the coloration of it, it's gone like you don't have that same coloration out here. So usually they're a little rosary bead. That's why it's called lymphatic rosary. But it's so congested in the lymph system up around the person's tonsils and their throat and their thyroid. And you can see how much it's drained and it's cleared, as the tonsils and the adenoids are the first line of defense of any sort of pathogen and bacteria from either in the food that we eat or the air that we breathe. So the lymphatic system is found in zone 6 when the lymphatic circulation becomes slow and overburdened with waste materials, congestion results. This condition is seen in the iris as small cloud-like spots. Now, this is coming from Dr. Bernard Jensen's book, Iridology Simplified. Sometimes these clouds are seen in varying distance into the interior, but generally are found near the periphery. They resemble a string of pearls or rosary and get their name from this appearance. The whiteness of these spots indicate that there's an acute activity or inflammation. Sometimes they appear to be yellow, which we are seeing in this iris from before. Sometimes they appear to be yellow or light brown or rusty orange. We are seeing that in this person's iris in their first iris picture image. This indicates that the condition has existed for some time. When the system's not functioning properly, there's a buildup of catarrh and mucus. The body's resistance to stress and illness is weakened, and it becomes susceptible to disease. Lymphatic circulation is based on muscular contraction. Therefore, exercise is essential for the prevention of lymphatic congestion. Tonsils, which I just shared about, adenoids, are lymphoid tissue. Many individuals can have these removed, a sign that they were overworked and enlarged as a result of excess toxic material they were unable to eliminate. At the time, if a cleansing program, that's our purification, everybody, was indicated, as well as proper nutrition and exercise, this would help prevent lymphatic congestion in later years. Now, obviously, that's our castoral packs. That's the amino acid program, because obviously there's the changes. All right, so then preventing that person having to have their tonsils or their adenoids removed, helping their white blood cells, their lymphocytes, their T cells, their neutrophils to be able to recognize any pathogen and bad bacteria and any fungus and mold that's causing the lymph system to be backed up and congested. Other organs relating to the lymphatic system are the appendix and the spleen. So when we're looking at the iridology and we're seeing that drainage of the lymph, then we also go, remember I said inside out, the colon has most lymph, right? 50% of the lymphatic system we have in our colon, just like our reproductive organs are also made up of 50% lymph. Now we go to where the appendix is, and it's close to the autonomic nerve reef. And if you look at where the person's appendix is, see they have a pocket, which is actually a genetic weakness, right where the appendix is. And look how much it's changed. When we draw on the photographs, it's just, shows you the power of the program that Jeff and Alin created It just is so inspiring to me. It really is so inspiring. And seeing it and being able to share with you all somebody else's healing. See, there is the lesion, right where the appendix is. Remember lymphatic rosary. The other organs that connect to the lymphatic system is the appendix and the spleen. And look at the change in the person's appendix. Now, still has a spoke, which is still some toxin leaking from that area. The appendix repopulates the good bacteria in the gut. The germicidal fluid in the appendix lubricates the valve that separates the small intestine from the large intestine, so acid doesn't destroy alkaline forms of good bacteria to activate growth hormone in the ascending transverse colon. The ascending transverse colon, where the bifidus resides, is where the dopamine, melatonin, serotonin is produced. 80% of it. So that's the reason the appendix is a very important part of our natural growth hormone. Our appendix and the germicidal fluid in the appendix also stimulates the spleen and that valve connection from the appendix to the pylorus to the spleen through the blood flow from the heart and the main artery, the splenic artery feeding blood to the spleen, then through the spleen in the arteries, right, the veins connecting along the stomach, right where the pylorus valve is, where the stomach and the duodenum connect, and also along the pancreas, where we were talking about earlier on our call. Tremendous amount of healing. Now, colorations, because some of this is hereditary. We see obviously a lot of babies' irises over the years that we've been doing this work. And so we will see mother, father, and then the baby. And the baby will be born with like a blue eye. And then over time, the eye goes from blue, and in that zone 6, we start to see some of the rosary. Now, what does that mean? Well, white means that obviously through them feeding and growing and pooing and peeing, they weren't getting the lymph to drain the excess toxin. And of course, they might have been living in a house that was moldy, or, they were, the mother was eating something that, was going through into the milk because, the baby has a bit of a sensitivity to that food, has an allergy to the food. So you start to see that showing up in the baby's eyes, the lymphatic rosary, and is showing up congestion. Now, when it goes white to yellow, that shows that the lymphatic weakness was actually passed on. And that's what I'm sharing with this photograph. This person inherited a weakness and congestion already in the lymphatic system. Now, lymphatic rosary isn't generally seen in a brown eye. It's usually generally seen in a blue or hazily green eye. It's not generally seen in a brown eye, or that you can't see it, because remember, it's still in zone 6. It just doesn't show up in a brown eye the same as it does in a blue eye as a rosary bead. That's how it gets its name, lymphatic rosary. So usually what you're seeing when the eye is showing coloration, like I shared, a baby will be born. I just was looking at a baby's iris just 2 days ago. Baby's 12 weeks old. The mother was able to take a photo, and I could see some of the genetic weaknesses in the baby's eye. And the baby has some congestion because they've moved house, and obviously the baby's having to go through the changes of moving from Sydney to, country. So the baby's having to go through the adjustment of the changes of environment. And so the mother is too. Everybody in the family is having to readjust and reestablish their cycle to their new environment. Now, moving to where they've moved to is awesome, because they're not dealing with the same levels of pollution being in the city. And you're dealing with other things that the body has to readjust itself. But so the baby's eye doesn't show the congestion yet, but I see a darker rim around the outer circumference of the baby's eye, which is showing the zone 7 and zone 6, which underneath that darker rim can start to show up some of the lymphatic rosary. So usually what you're seeing is the baby's eye is blue, then that coloration starts to come in the iris where it looks hazily green. And that's already showing the genetic inherited either estrogen or sugars it's already showing the genetics, or obviously, as we're seeing with that iris that we were showing and analyzing, it's hereditary because of where it's coming from inside out. The rays from the intestinal digestive tract radiating out to the circumference of zone 6, and it's yellow and it's orange and it's rusty brown. So that's definitely genetically inherited lymphatic weakness. That's why some children have more mucus and have the tonsil swell up and have more congestion in their throat, because it's already a weakness genetically passed on.